2, 1.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wesley Guild SA. And today we are talking about quite an interesting topic that normally we would think affects children, but it affects adults as well. We are talking about speech therapy and cognition for adults. Before we get into it, I would like to ask Reverend Ngombo to open for us in prayer.
Friends, before we pray, I just want to share the word from the book of Exodus, chapter 14, verse 14, as the word for the day. Exodus 14, verse 14, it reads, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Come, let us pray. Egameni loyise nelonyana nelikamoya ingcwele yisewe Nkosi yethu nguYesu Kristu, dali lwezulu nomhlaba. Wena Nkosi okhoyo ophilayo ongunaphakade. Ngaphandle kwakho somandla sinayo omunye uThixo nguThixo wethu. Sibulela Nkosi lemini yanamhlanje, sibulela Nkosi olusuku esiphe lona. Sibulela Nkosi insikelelo zakho ezimileyo ezingunaphakade. Usithanda Nkosi singaboni, usithanda Nkosi singenzanga lutho okuhle phambi kwakho. Kepha wena ngaba unguNkulunkulu onesihawu, uNkulunkulu ohawukelayo. Mana njalo somandla ube nguNkulunkulu wethu thina sibe ngabantu bakho. Nakulesigaba samanje simoya ngcwele si-invite ubukhona bakho. Presence yakho siyayidinga as we meet in this place to once more, Lord, hear and to learn. There is nothing, Lord, that empowers us more than to sit in this platform. Every day, Lord, we get something new. Every day, Lord, we get informed. So be with your servant who will lead us this evening. Be with us all, Nkosi emakhayeni ethu ahlukeneyo. Usigcine Nkosi, usilondoloze, usiphephise kuzo zonke izifo. Usilwele kuko konke ukula kwentshaba zethu. Sithi siqinisile Nkosi ekuthembeni kwakho. Singoyika abantu abayimpekithi ngenxa yamandla kaYesu Kristu Nkosi yethu. Amen.
Amen. So as I mentioned that today's topic is about speech therapy and cognition for adults. Here to unpack the topic for us is Usisile Nobuhle Mafuya from the Eastern Cape. She's a qualified speech therapist working for the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Health. She obtained her BSc in speech language pathology from the University of Cape Town. So she is quite a credible expert on this knowledge. Over to you, sis. And just before that, I would like to remind everyone that, once again, this is a very informative and interactive platform. So if you have any questions, if you would like to know anything, feel free to drop it on the comments list. Over to you, sis.
Good evening, everyone. My apologies, firstly, for my bad lighting. I have very bad lighting here. But as Usisi Echilo, that I am Usilindo Mafuya, a speech therapist. I was asked to cover two topics that are related to my scope of practice. But firstly, I'd like to highlight what is a speech therapist and the areas I work in before I get into my presentation. So my work entails the diagnostic procedures, evaluation techniques, assessment tools, and various therapeutic techniques related to different communicative disorders and or swallowing disorders. I work with patients from birth to old age. I work with individuals, groups, parents, families, teachers, employers, and communities. Some of the areas that we work in as speech therapists are stuttering, voice disorders, language disorders, communication disorders, articulation, neurogenic speech, which is resultant from brain injury, strokes, cerebral palsy, TB, meningitis, etc. And I also work with kiddies that present with what we know as autism spectrum disorder. And I also work with people with feeding and swallowing problems that might be due to cardiac problems, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, cancer of the throat, and stroke. So I was asked to talk about language development in children, as well as cognitive communication disorders in adults, which are part of my scope of practice, as I mentioned before. So under language development, I'm going to cover subtopics such as how children acquire language, how to stimulate your child at home for language development, differences in language acquisition in boys and girls, signs and symptoms of language delay, as well as where to take your child should you suspect that your child has a language delay, a speech disorder, or literacy problem. And then under cognitive communication, I'll answer the big question that I was asked: is there a link between delayed language development and cognitive communication problems during adulthood, as well as what are some of the causes of the cognitive difficulties or problems, some of the signs that one presents with when they have cognitive communication problems, and where to seek help should you present with some of those signs. So language development is a critical part of child development. It supports the child's ability to communicate and express and understand feelings. It also supports thinking and problem solving and developing, as well as maintaining relationships. Also, learning to understand and use language is the critical first step in literacy and the basis for learning to read and write in children. One would ask, how then do children acquire language? Children learn language from their surroundings. They copy what those around them are saying repeatedly. For example, one of the first words a child will be able to say is mama or mom. This is because they hear this word repeatedly during the day, almost every day. So the best way to encourage your child's speech and language development is to do lots of talking with your child. You can do this during play, because whatever you want to teach a toddler or an infant, it has to be in a fun way. So during bedtime activities, after bathing the child, you put them down on the mat and then you start playing with them. And when you're playing, you use language. So things that one can do at home when they have a baby, just to try and stimulate them for language acquisition. It's very important that we talk to our children and treat them as talkers, especially in the first 12 months of life, because they are trying to make sense of the sounds and noises in the environment. And as time goes, they will start to make cooing sounds, babbling, as well as saying single words with meaning. Also, we always see on TV that the people who are always singing as well as reading to their newborn babies. This is very important. Reading and singing nursery rhymes or any other song to your child is very important, because remember, for a child to be able to speak, they need to understand. So you need to first build the understanding, which is why you need to speak to your child. And then as they understand the words, then they will start saying a few words for themselves. Also, what's important is labeling objects and toys that your child plays with. For example, if the child enjoys playing with a ball, there are a number of words that they can actually learn from that one particular activity of just playing with a ball. The child can learn words like ball, throw, take, kick, catch, depending on what is it that you guys usually do when you're playing with the ball. And so those words can form part of the first words that the child learns, meaning that you need to talk to your child during play to try and stimulate him or her. Also, you need to talk through everyday activities. For example, when you're feeding the child, you do not just take the child from wherever and then you put them down and you just put the spoon in. You do not do that. What's important is communicate. Tell the child, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to feed you, I'm going to bath you, and when you're feeding, open your mouth, you say such things, because now we're trying to train the brain, whatever stimuli that comes through the eye, that is maybe the child can see a ball, and then you keep saying the word ball, the ear also now has an incoming stimuli. So now the brain makes connections between what the eye sees and what the ear hears. So that's very important to do at home, so that we can try and actually facilitate as well as stimulate our children at home so that they gain language. So the key to language development is repetition, repetition, repetition. You do not teach a child to say ball and you expect that if I teach the child now at 6:15, then in the morning they're gonna know the word. It's all about repetition, and they build on that understanding, and then it goes on to them being able to imitate now the word. Even if it does not come out right, they do not really say ball the correct way. It's okay, because sounds do not develop at certain ages. So there's certain ages that a sound will develop, and so it's okay if they can say the B sound but not the L sound, because that sound develops later in life. And also making sure that you simplify what you're saying. By simplify, I don't mean use baby language and don't pronounce words correctly, because if you do that, you're opening a can of worms, because the child might end up having articulation problems because they are not exposed to the correct pronunciation of sounds, which will then mean your child needs to attend speech therapy to correct that and learn to articulate the sounds correctly. So whatever sounds, even if you know that, okay, this is the R sound, then it develops between the ages of 5 and 6. Doesn't mean that when you're saying words that have the R sound, then you're just gonna leave it out or whatever. You still say the sound, but you know that the child will not be able to say the sound correctly because they're still learning. They're not at the age where they're supposed to be saying that sound. Also, it's important that we treat our children as communication partners, as if they understand what we're saying, because the aim is to promote a language-rich environment, to expose the child to language by using different words, and as well as building the understanding. And then the question that came when I was asked to do this presentation was, are there any differences between boys and girls when it comes to language development? Perhaps due to different roles of men and women in social groups during evolution, they differ in their verbal abilities. These differences are also, if not even more present in children, both in the course of typical and pathological development. Research shows that boys actually have a slower capacity for language acquisition, meaning that only 30% of them are early talkers, whereas the other 70% are late talkers. These differences are not only observed in language development, but are also seen in the development of overall social communicational skills. For example, turn-taking, eye contact, and all those. So during the first years of life, girls on average acquire language faster than boys and have a larger vocab. For example, at 16 months, a girl child will have a vocab of 95 words, while a boy has a vocab of only 25 words. Those differences are also seen in children presenting with pathological development. For example, if your child is not developing normally because they have maybe a condition such as autism spectrum disorder, then their chances or rate of improving when it comes to language acquisition is much better in girls compared to boys. Unfortunately, there is no way of telling if your child is a late or an early talker. We only see as they grow and we notice the difficulties they have. What this means is that even though there are differences in language acquisition between boys and girls, parents and caregivers need to continue with stimulating children at home the same way for both girls and boys, using some of the techniques that I mentioned previously. However, we need to remember that even though your child might be a girl, she might still present with delayed language skills due to different causes. Another thing, premature babies are prone to delays compared to peers of the same age born full term, but by the age of 3, they usually have caught up with their peers of the same age. Causes of language delays include, but are not limited to, a tongue tie, premature birth, hearing loss, lack of stimulation, that is not communicating with the child at home, conditions such as autism spectrum disorder, intellectual disabilities, and neurological conditions such as what we call cerebral palsy. The signs and symptoms of a language development in infants and toddlers includes child not making any sounds or babbling, which might be suggestive of a hearing loss, or it's because maybe we do not communicate with our children at home, which now they're not really exposed to any language in their environment. Also not saying single words by the ages of a year and 1 year, 6 months. Difficulty following instructions, as well as inability to speak in 2 to 3 word sentences by the ages of 3. If I had enough time, I would also highlight some of the challenges they have when they are in school going age, which might affect their literacy, because sometimes language is very important for literacy. It prepares the child for literacy. Now, if ever the child is delayed when it comes to language understanding or speech-wise, then there might be some problems that actually the child encounters when they're in school. Their literacy is not as good as peers in the same class. It's important to take note of these, so that if you suspect a delay, you can then take your child to the nearest school or hospital where they can actually be seen by a doctor, so that they can refer for further investigations. But a speech therapist and an audiologist would be one of those people that the children are referred to if there's a hearing problem that is being queried. So an audiologist comes into play when it comes to a query of a hearing loss. And then if it's just a language problem, then us speech therapists would then see the child and do an assessment, and then take it from there. Depending on what the child presents with, then we set goals with the family, find out what is it that the parents and the caregivers want the child to be able to do, so that we try our best to include that in therapy. If the child is already in school, then we also have to find out information from the school, try to get information on how the child is in class, the behavioral part, because remember I said that some of the causes include certain conditions. So the child might be presenting with a language delay, whereas there's an underlying cause which might be a neurological condition, hence the behavior as well as the delay that we see. And that brings me to the end of the first part of my presentation. Since the 21st of September is marked as the World Alzheimer's Day, Awareness Day in the health calendar, we'll be talking about cognitive communication in this presentation. I am going to try and answer the question that I was asked that says, is there a link between delayed language development and cognitive communication disorders? When we talk about communication disorders, that is cognitive communication disorders, we talk of problems with communication that have an underlying cause in a cognitive deficit rather than a primary language or speech deficit. A cognitive disorder can range from mild cognitive impairment to advanced dementia. Cognition includes areas of attention, concentration, orientation, word retrieval, and executive functioning skills such as problem solving and reasoning. There are normal age-related changes that occur, and part of of a speech therapist's role is educating patients and their families about typical versus atypical changes. For example, it is common for individuals to forget names of new acquaintances as they get older, but it is not typical for them to forget names of familiar friends and family members. It is also common for individuals to have more difficulty multitasking, as well as difficulty paying attention as they get older. There's cognitive processes mentioned, that is your attention, memory, executive functioning above, not isolated abilities. They work well together. A problem with one or more cognitive functions can cause difficulty performing activities of daily living safely and effectively, as well as communicating effectively. Once weaknesses are identified through evaluation, then my job as a speech therapist is to set up a treatment plan that consists of therapeutic activities, that is your brain exercises. Also, our plan includes compensatory strategies, that is, maybe this person has problems with memory, then they need to have a diary. We can use sticky notes, we can use phone reminders so that they do not forget all those important things they have to do on a daily basis. And we also educate the patient and caregivers, and also make the patient aware of his or her difficulties so that they know what is happening with them, and it makes it so easy for us actually to plan intervention and then they participate. Because another problem that we have is that if now a patient is not aware of his or her difficulties, they are not going to participate in therapy, and they might be okay with coming to my sessions, but the generalization is not there because at home they do not implement whatever they've been taught in therapy. So some of the causes of cognitive communication difficulties, actually the main one is damage to the brain. The damage to the brain might be due to a stroke, traumatic brain injury, brain infection, brain tumor, degenerative diseases such as Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, dementia, etc., as well as what we call attention deficit or hyperactivity disorder. Some of those signs under ADHD are impulsivity, irritability, difficulty focusing, forgetfulness, difficulty paying attention, and short attention span. So a person with a cognitive communication disorder may have difficulty paying attention to a conversation, staying on topic, remembering information, responding accurately, understanding jokes, or following instructions. To then answer the question, is there a link between delayed language development and cognitive communication disorders? There is a link, but not all people that have a language delay will have a cognitive problem. We treat this case by case as those patients present differently. For example, research and my personal experience have shown that someone that has a chronic condition such as the ADHD that I had mentioned actually have an increased prevalence of language impairments, whereas some of the people that have cognitive problems did not have any delays during childhood, but the problem started after taking certain medication that can cause temporal memory loss, having a brain tumor, or suffering a traumatic brain injury or a stroke. So it just depends which areas are affected, and if areas that are responsible for our attention, memory, concentration are affected, then one might present with those. If someone is having problems with attention, memory, reasoning, concentration, etc., he or she must consult a doctor for a further investigation so that they can be referred to the person, the right person to actually help them. If, for example, one presents with attention, memory, and concentration problems, then they can be referred to us, speech therapists, as well as occupational therapists, because they also work with these problems, so that we can find a way to help the person cope and live a normal life or close to a normal life. I think I'll stop there for now and I'll take questions. Thank you.
Okay, I've got a question here about speech, particularly with children. At what age would you say is the best age to teach a child different languages?
There is actually no age that is best to teach a child different languages. But also now, if, for example, let's say I am Xhosa, I stay in KwaZulu-Natal, and the child is also learning, so at school they're learning isiZulu and English, and at home we speak isiXhosa. It just depends on the exposure they have for each language, as well as how quick they are when it comes to learning the language, which now there might be some delays that we notice in one language, because there's just too much language that the child is exposed to. For example, at school they speak English, so it's okay. Maybe there might not be any problem, because remember, they're getting lessons in that language, but in Xhosa, because it's only spoken at home, there's no formal instruction in school, then we might notice that, oh, this child is a bit slow when it comes to acquiring isiXhosa, but there is no right or wrong age to introduce a different language to a child.
Okay, just a follow-up question on that. Sikelelwa Nukuza on Facebook says, if the parents are speaking a different home languages, could that possibly cause delayed language development in a child?
As I mentioned, that is a possibility, but it's very important now, when also the child is presenting with such, then we need to decide as the family and the therapist or the teachers involved in that case to actually plan which language are we prioritizing. If, for example, the child is presenting with a delay and that one language that actually it is a language of instruction at school, then we do that. We do therapy in that language, and we just leave the other one. But sometimes you have parents that actually want the child to learn both languages at the same time. So there's usually delays, which that's where we come in, because also now a child might know one item in isiZulu and not know it in English, whereas they're supposed to know it in English in school. So now there's that what we call code switching, where they start a sentence maybe in isiZulu and they finish it in English, which now impacts their learning in school, which also means that there might be a delay.
Okay, I don't really have a question. It's more of a statement from Balu Zondi, who says, this is very informative. The second part of the presentation focuses on something that has broken the fabric of societies. Alzheimer has categorized abantu abadala as abathakati, if found in places they can't remember how they got there. This presentation is giving us some insight to some of the aging difficulties. And another comment that I have here is from Bulazondi again, that says, this topic is relevant at so many levels. It will allow us as parents to identify barriers that we can address with practitioners as early as possible. So yeah, those were just the comments that I have so far. If you have any more information that you would like to share, you can go ahead and just share that.
Okay, I think I want to cover just a little bit of some of the difficulties we actually see with children that we always say in our families that I ufuzile, so they take after someone in the family. Sometimes they might take after someone in the family, but it doesn't mean that maybe if a child is stuttering, then it is okay for them to speak like that. There are therapy techniques that we actually use to help children so that it doesn't have an impact on them, especially in school, because there is usually bullying and teasing that happens if a child has a stutter. So we usually work with their class teachers as well as families, because also you find that if a child wants to say something and then they stutter, then the mom or the dad will say, breathe, 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 stop, stop, such things. Meaning that it's also now going to make the child aware of the difficulties, and they're going to think there's something wrong with them. It affects their confidence in school, which now if they have to answer a question in class, they will never, they'll just say, I don't know. Because I don't know is easier than having to give like a couple of sentences while now they know that I cannot say words correctly and all of that. Another thing that's very important that I've actually seen that is a bit of a problem is not seeking help, because I grew up in the Eastern Cape, in Tanzania. We grew up there with children that actually had what we call autism. And they would always say that, no, this child is like this, he's hyperactive, he has so much energy and all of that. And this child is a boy, so boys are like this, they'll get over it. If you see something that is not normal or you've never seen it before, I'd suggest that parents actually seek help, because if you stay with a child at home that has communication problems, then they are going to be very delayed, because now they cannot speak, and then only at the age of 8 you want to bring them for therapy. Now you've missed the critical periods, critical ages where actually now they could have learned something. So it's very important that we keep track of our kids' abilities. Also now I've seen in the Road to Health card, they have milestones. So they do say that for 0 to 3, this is what the child is supposed to be doing. It includes things like your speech, some bit of fine and gross motor between the ages of 3 and 6. And then when one takes the child for immunization, then they can tick, is the child able to do this? And also another thing, parents, I don't know if they are not aware of the difficulties or they're in denial or what, but we usually have problems with children where a teacher notices a problem with the child, calls the parents and says that, okay, Usilindo Buhle is having these problems, so I'd suggest that you go and seek help at this place. Maybe because usually they would suggest that they go to social workers, because that's one of the professions that I know in the health field. So the social workers always know where to refer. And so people must not stay with children that are presenting with some concerning behaviors or unusual behaviors. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I've got a question here from Kokom Kalali. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Yes. Uti, does Uputeketisa have any negative delays in the development of a child's brain?
I did mention in my presentation that when we say words and when we're communicating with abantwana, it's very important that we say the words correctly. Okuteketisa is not a problem, but you do not do that to 1-year-old that you do not communicate with them at all. You're just using ukuteketisa and all of that. Because now remember, we want to stimulate our kids. There's a time for ukuteketisa. There is a time where we actually need to communicate with our kids. And when you're communicating, use clear speech. Use all the right sounds. Do not try and say, maybe you want to say ibola, but because you know this is a child and then you're going to say iboya, there is no word such as iboya, it's ibola. So you want to expose the child to all the sounds, because now we're trying to build their understanding, their expressive abilities, as well as their inventory when it comes to all the sounds, because sounds develop at different ages. It's okay if they cannot say a certain sound at a certain age, it's fine, but we need to make sure we communicate clearly with the kids, use the correct articulation for the sounds. So ukuteketisa doesn't really have an effect on how the child pronounces words, but how we communicate with the child is a problem.
Okay. Baluzondi says, how informed is the Department of Education about the diverse learning barriers? Or what can you say about inclusive education within the context of learning barriers?
I do not want to talk about the Department of Education because they are going to kill me. But according to my experience, as a student, we used to go to schools where we actually go to a school that is for like a mainstream school where the children do not actually have any problems, but it was a way of actually teaching the teachers so that they can be on the lookout for certain things, because we usually miss things because the parents do not take it seriously, or the teachers do not take it seriously. So it's very important that we form a team, honestly, because now you find that I can say that, oh, I'm a therapist, so I'd have nothing to do with DOE because I'm employed by DOH. But we are supposed to have therapists in schools, which we don't really have. For example, I worked in the Eastern Cape for the past 2.5 years, and there were no special schools. It was my cry all the time. I used to go to outreach, go to schools, go to those centers where they keep children with disabilities, but there is no school placement. You try, you knock on every door, but it's just not working. So I think another thing that I was concerned about was, I understand if a teacher that is like in her 60s or late 50s does not know about things like speech therapy. So if a child is presenting with whatever problematic behavior or communication problem, then they do not refer. But now my problem is, what is it that is happening with the new teachers? What are they covering in school? Because I believe that there's new professions. For example, speech therapy is not new, but it is new in the Black community, because we used to actually say, if now a child cannot speak, I takes after whoever, I utakatiwe and whatever. We try and find reasons, which, okay, it's fine, whatever the reason is, but now there is help. So I think it's very important that we educate teachers, we educate families, communities, everyone. We need like lots and lots of education so that we're able to actually come together, work together just to help the children. Because there are so many children that actually have other abilities that if I see this child from a certain age, then I might actually help this child to do something. Because now also with whatever I'm doing, the language stuff, I'm not saying this child must go back to a mainstream school. I'm teaching this child maybe language so that they're able to communicate, because they have a skill. They can do work at a workshop, but now they need to be able to communicate with people so that they can go and function independently.
Thank you. I've got a comment here from Masibonge Nkukwana, who says, this is very informative indeed. I think it's really nice that both parents and teachers and whoever else is involved in the growth and development of a child be made aware of autism spectrum disorders and behavioral problems, including ADHD. They tend to present quite late in health facilities, mostly because they are not aware that these kids have problems, and most of the time they are seen as kids that don't listen or are problematic, especially behavioral problems. Abanye kuthiwe badinga amasiko, yes, it's just comorbidities. Thank you once again, quite informative, which is a very interesting thing because quite often you will hear whenever a child presents some sort of problem, it is said, no, sometimes it's amasiko, it's ancestral issues that need to be sorted with the child. However, there is a health reason. There is an underlying health reason that needs to be addressed. How often do you deal with such problems? Have you ever come across a problem where a child does have a problem that needs to be sorted out? However, the parents or the family are just so stuck on the fact that something needs to be done traditionally.
Working in the Eastern Cape, especially Mthatha, I have encountered so many of those cases. But what I think actually worked for me was educating the parents or caregivers so that they understand. Obviously, I'm not going to disregard whatever they believe in, but listen to them. This one time, this other granny said that, oh, there was something in our yard at night, and then she tried explaining, and then the child, when they woke up in the morning, the child could not move, could not speak, and all of that, which now, as further investigations were done, we actually realized that this child has what we call ETB meningitis, you see. So now you need to try and win over ugogo so that they can then come for therapy, saying that, listen, this might be the case, but allow me to help your child with the little knowledge that I have and see where it goes. You see, because also when it comes to audiology, because we do bits and pieces here and there of what audios do, like screenings, you find someone saying that, hayi imbeleko kwaTintina azange yenziwe, so now I'm presenting with this problem. Whereas now when you are assessing, you actually see over, oh, okay, fine, maybe there was trauma, this person was slapped, so that's why now hearing yake ingasekho kakuhle, or it's gone like in one ear or whatever. So these are things that happen, because I think because us in the Black poor communities, for the longest time, we did not know about these kinds of things. So everything seems new, and we have already established our own ways of actually trying to come out with reasons why this is happening. But it does happen, and it's not easy working with families that have those mentalities, because now you first need to work with them. Working with them, trying to win them over might take months, especially if those are people that can only come to the hospital once. So every now and then when they come, you educate the child. They're not going to do it because they believe this child needs imbeleko. This child needs to be taken to a sangoma or whatever. But you never, ever say that whatever they're saying is wrong. It's not wrong. It's what they understand. It's what they believe in. But also show them your way. Show them your way so that they can do, if they want, they do both. They do the belego, but still come for therapy.
Just to touch on Alzheimer and dementia, which mainly affects older people, as a young individual or a young practitioner in the health department in this country, do you ever come across issues where an older person is insisting that there's nothing wrong with them, or does not even trust that you are able to help them with whatever it is that they need help with. Maybe a person, Ari, no, if anything, you're the one that doesn't know what you're talking about. I'm right, yeah.
It happens all the time because when I was studying in the Western Cape, we were mainly working with the white community, which they know those things. So your job is very easy. But after graduating and then I moved to Mthatha, yeah, it was difficult because one, this patient status, he is a 40-something-year-old man. Imagine a Xhosa man, nje, how stubborn they are. So now he's gonna say, "Hi, so there's nothing wrong with how he's speaking. And you're not saying there's anything wrong, but you're trying to make his speech better. You see, you find an old person that's gonna tell you, who are you? You are young. So you cannot be telling me to change this and that. For example, stroke patients. You're gonna say, okay, fine. After having your first stroke, you're at a higher risk of having another stroke. And so you need to do secondary prevention, that is changing how you eat, exercising, and all of that. That old man is just gonna look at you while you're busy telling him about his a diet that's high in fiber, exercising, and all of that. And they're not gonna do it because you're young. Who are you? He's been living this lifestyle. So it's all about building a relationship with your patients. We usually have the most difficult patients, but you need ukuzithoba, be a child, but a child with knowledge, so that whatever thing that he doesn't want to do, you find a way of ukumngena so that you get it by in yakhe, so that at least now they warm up to you, to the idea, and then they start implementing what you want them to implement. But it's not easy working with old people because they've learned behaviors and coping mechanisms of whatever problems they have.
So in instances like that, when it comes to treatment of these conditions that old people are facing, what works? Do we do therapy, or is it medication that they need to take, or does it vary depending on the situation?
It varies depending on the situation, because also how severe the problem is. If a patient has advanced dementia, it's a matter of your palliative care, trying to reserve dignity and all of that. But if they come early, still presenting with maybe Alzheimer's or early onset dementia, then you want them to be involved and therapy so that we plan together, because they're still able to communicate, for example. So you assess, you educate them on their difficulties, and then you plan together. Because you find that if they come late, maybe they aren't even able to communicate, then you find that this person is going to refuse treatment. But when refusing this treatment, the family wants this person to actually get the treatment, whereas it's against the person's wishes and all of that. So it's very important that we educate communities so that they are aware of those conditions and all of that, so that it makes it easier to deal with those situations. Because other patients would say, oh, okay, I lived for the longest time, now I do not want treatment. I'm not going to take any medication, you see, or I do not want therapy. So it's a matter of just trying and seeing what works for who. So yeah.
Interesting indeed. So what would the signs be? So for someone who has umdomdala, who might have these conditions, what would you say are the main things to look out for, and when do we start seeking help?
When it comes to seeking help, we always stay at home with whatever that I do not understand. And only then when it gets serious, then I want to come when, for example, I can no longer walk, I can no longer speak and all of that. But it's very important that if there are any changes in your health, it's very important to consult a doctor, go to your nearest clinic, go to your nearest hospital. And then I always say to my patients, be like a kid, report everything. Report everything. If they've put you on treatment and there are any changes that you are noticing, you tell your doctor, it has changed. And before I did not have this kind of problem, but after starting this treatment, I'm presenting with these problems. So some of the things that we would see in Alzheimer's disease, for example, when it comes to the cognitive side of it, they usually have a mental decline, difficulty thinking and understanding. They have confusion in evening hours. They have delusions. They're usually forgetful, disorientated. They usually make things up. And there is mental confusion, difficulty concentrating, and they have difficulty creating new memories. And in terms of their behavior, some are agitated, aggressive, they have difficulty with self-care, they are very irritable, they are restless, they lack restraint, and also their mood. Some others are angry, so there's always that anger. They're always wandering and getting lost. And some would have hallucinations, paranoia, and depression. So those are some of the things that happen. That's why now in the community, they would say, hi, this lady has lost their mind, because now they're starting to do things that they did not do before, which now comes back to what would say, hi, there's witchcraft involved, because Usilindo Guhle was okay for the longest time. And then now at the age, let's say of 65, she has started behaving like this.
Okay, just to take you back to the children, I've got 3 last questions. They're all from Badu Zondi. And Uti, what happens if the parent is presented with 2 reports? The one says the learner has a learning barrier, but the other report says there is nothing wrong with the development of the learner.
When it comes to that, I always say it's very important to seek help. So you come to me, and if, for example, I always say give my patients the option of actually explaining everything to them after assessing and all of that, and saying, if you want a second opinion, you can either come back to where I'm working and then you'll be seen by someone else. Or if, for example, a patient is seen by a doctor and the doctor says that, and because nowadays parents Google everything. So they are always second guessing whatever you're saying. They don't actually believe what you're saying. So you go for a second opinion. If it's a must that you go for a third one, with pleasure, do so. Because I'm not saying that someone is wrong. For example, someone might be seen by, let's say, by me, and I say, oh, okay, this patient has a learning disorder, you see? So there's a learning or a cognitive impairment. Whereas now when they actually seen by, let's say, a doctor or an OT or a physio, then this patient actually now is referred to an audiologist. And when that happens, then it means that Now they are suspecting something else, and maybe I was wrong. This is not a learning difficulty. It's just a hearing problem that I missed, you see. So sometimes we miss. So that's why my assessment, for example, takes at least 2 sessions. I do not assess and give results in 1 session because I need to be sure. Because sometimes you get a referral saying that this child has autism. And now because you read that, whatever you are seeing is just giving you those red flags. Whereas maybe it's not autism, maybe it's just ADHD, not autism, for example. So it happens. So if you get 2 different reports from 2 different professionals, go for a 3rd one.
Okay, and this one, I'm not so great in Zulu, but I'll try. Ngabe kubhetere ukuyisa umntwana kudokotela or kukhansela owazi ulwimi lakhe mother tongue or language does not really matter. A diagnosis is a diagnosis.
A diagnosis is a diagnosis. Patients actually do have a choice, or parents or caregivers actually have a choice of choosing who they want to be seen. For example, where I'm working, there's me, also speaking, and a bit of Zulu. We have an Indian lady that speaks mainly English. We have my other colleague that is Zulu, so she speaks Zulu and English. We have my other colleague that speaks English and Afrikaans. So at least there is a choice, because also you find that because of that language barrier when it comes to speech, because now let's say I'm going to assess someone, if I do not understand their responses, how am I going to diagnose what's wrong with them? You see, so when it comes to speech, rather you be seen by someone that understands and speaks the same language as you. But if, for example, it's something that needs scans and all of that, then a scan can be done because you don't need to communicate with whoever that needs to do your scans, for example. But also, for example, if a doctor, they're suspecting autism, then they ask the child to do something. The mom is there to interpret, for example. They observe the child's behavior while busy consulting with the mom and all of that. So things like that, they don't actually really need someone that speaks the same language as the child. But with us speech therapists, I suggest that you speak the language of that patient so that you get to understand more information. Because one thing that I actually have been experiencing, because I've been working on my own for the past 1.5 years, so I moved to a new place where I'm actually working with people. And because now the others only speak English, now when they have to see a Zulu speaking patient, they usually miss some things. And now when that person is not there and I have to see their patient, maybe I might pick up something that actually, why is she working on this? Whereas now I see this and they were supposed to prioritize this and work on it first before working on that, you see.
Okay, so our final question is, how addictive is Ritalin on our children? And when is the termination age?
Can you please repeat that?
How addictive is the Ritalin on our children? And when is the termination age?
I honestly do not want to answer that. I am not qualified for that. But what I can say about Ritalin is that, for example, if I'm having a patient that has hyperattention deficit with maybe autism, and so I'm struggling to do anything with the patient, it's one of, because I'll see this patient for quite some time and I still do not get to do anything. Because of their behavioral problems and all of that, it's wise for me to then send back to the doctor so that they actually see if this patient really needs to be on Ritalin or any other medication, because that is going to actually help me if now they are on treatment. So that I get to do things in therapy. But one problem is that we usually have is that now this child is hyperactive, climbs on everything at home, even in school, if they're at the school going age. Then the problem we have is that Now, after initiation of the treatment, they are usually drowsy, for example, they're sleepy and all of that. Then you find that parents actually stop. They do not go back to the doctor and then say, oh, okay, fine. For the past month, this child has been on Ritalin, and these are the things that have changed. Maybe the appetite, the sleep pattern, energy levels during the day, concentration, and all of that, so that the doctor can actually adjust the dosage. So I'm not gonna say when we can start, where we can actually stop using Ritalin. That's a doctor's part.
Okay, thank you so much for today. Once again, it has really been an informative one. We've learned a lot. I'm not sure what happened there, but we've learned a lot. It's really been great. Thank you once again, and on behalf of everyone watching this, I would like to thank you. You answered questions, and I think you highlighted things that we didn't know. Personally, I've never been exposed to such health matters. So thank you very much for that once again. Yes, we are live tomorrow again at 6 with yet another interesting topic. And you can join us. We will be talking about the history behind patriarchy. And that is a very, very touchy and interesting topic. Yes, so do join us. Before we close, I would like to hand over back to Orev for the closing prayer. And from my side, it's good night. Over to you, Rev.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sister Palisa. Thank you, Lindo, for the informative session. If people want to get hold of you, Lindo, where do you practice?
I am currently based in Pietermaritzburg, Okwangoku, at a center called Pietermaritzburg Assessment and Therapy Center. But if anyone has any questions, they can send me an inbox on Facebook, so I can try and answer, because I know I didn't cover everything. There's lots of areas that actually we work in that I did not touch on. So if, for example, someone they know in the family that had a stroke, a child that has difficulties in school and all of that, someone that stutters, they can just send me an inbox. I'll try my best to answer and connect them with their nearest speech therapist.
Thank you. Let's pray. Sinikela kulo Somandla lonke udumo amandla nobukhosi nobungcwalisa, sibulela Nkosi ngontwana wakho, sibulela Nkosi ingqondo umphe yona, sibulela Nkosi ubeka anako, sibulela Nkosi ulwazi asinike lona, mana njalo ke Somandla ube nguThixo wakhe umkhusele ngamaxesha onke. Sithandazela Nkosi ukuba umkhulise ekuthandeni nasekwazini wena, ngaphezu kwezinto zonke Somandla umnike zonke izinto angenazo nazilangazelelayo, ngoba nguThixo sithembisile wathi Nkosi esicela egameni lakho wena uyawusenzela. Sisikeleleke sonke amakhaya ngamakhaya kwindawo siphila kuzo. Sithandazela Nkosi bonke abantwana bethu abancinci, Nkosi kule nyanga emitsha, young people, yiba nguThixo bonke sibakhusele phakathi kwazo zonke Nkosi izinto zingaba yingozi ezimpilweni zabo. Singcwalise ke Somandla usithambisa ngcwelise sonke, silale Nkosi ngokonwaba singothuswa lutho. Ekugqibeleni lutho ufefele Nkosi yethu nguYesu Kristu, uthando lukaThixo onguyise nobudlelwane kaMoya Oyingcwele mabuhlale buphumile kuthi sonke nasemakhayeni ethu ukusukela ngoku kude kube naphakade. Amen.
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 Thank you very much, and good night and goodbye.
Bye.